It's Easter, and I thought a walk through the garden would be a beautiful way to celebrate Easter with you guys. This is a banana shrub. It's actually a tree. I'm forming it into a tree. It's an old-fashioned shrub, and these little blooms smell like ripe bananas. My rhododendron back here is blooming. It's trying. It hasn't grown very much, but it's blooming. These are anemones coming out. I see hostas peeking through. We just added on to this bed and made this little rock circle here. I hated all this, the squared off lines, so I wanted some curve into it. So we added this little rock bed, and I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna put here yet. I'm thinking about like these real bright pink astilbes and little lady lime ferns. I think that would be really pretty together. That's what I'm thinking about, but I don't know yet. All my little baby hostas are popping up in there. Solomon seal came back. This is variegated Solomon seal. This Mount Laurel is just struggling. It looks so terrible. There's some kind of little cutworm that keeps eating it. And my little baby Chloe ate on it too, which is toxic for goats, and it made her really sick. Scared us to death, but this mountain laurel's gonna go. I'm probably just gonna move it over into the woodland garden, and I'm gonna do something else here. I'm thinking about doing a sunshine anise here, which would be really pretty, I think. But I want it to fill up this whole space and hide underneath the porch here. And this mountain laurel is just not doing the trick. Look at this beautiful Lenten rose. Isn't that so pretty? I love the color of it. My Pieris has finished its big show. And we added on another little bed here, so I'll figure out what I'm gonna do and probably do the same thing on this side as well. Look at my Japanese maple. Isn't that beautiful? I think I'm gonna get some purple Heucheras and put kind of round out right here with that lime green creeping Jenny under it. I think that'll be pretty. And over here, we added rock to this bed, and this Japanese maple's trying to survive, struggles. And Chase and I moved these boxwoods over here to make like a wall. And Peggy Martin is about to start blooming. She is full of buds. It'll be so pretty. The garden is getting so green and lush and beautiful. It's filling out so good. Except these poor little pitiful camellias, and they're struggling, but they're gonna catch up eventually. So my strategy is, and this is usually my strategy when I help other people do gardens, is to get in the foundation plants first. All your foundation plants, your evergreens, shrubs, roses, the bones of the garden. Get those in, let them get established a little bit, and then I like to come in and pop in perennials. So I've added old-fashioned chrysanthemums, which is a great fall bloomer. And I like to add perennials and color, where I'm going to have interest all year long, where something different's happening all year long. So these are Crystal Fairy roses, and then I've got my little boxwoods here, and they're eventually going to make like a little circular wall around my fountain. Then I've got my arborvitaes as my backdrop. These are Bobo hydrangeas right here, so that's really going to be pretty when it comes on out. I've got salvia popped in here. I've got a lot of spaces I can add more perennials, so I'm going to add a few more this year. This is Lamarne rose, and it's starting to bloom. So pretty, so pretty. I moved some daffodils over here from the orchard. I planted a tulip magnolia right here, so I'm excited about that. That's going to be really pretty right here. This is my dwarf blueberry bush covered in blooms and bees. And here is my beautiful quietness rose that I love. I see some buds on it. Won't be long and she'll be making her show. We added some arborvitaes there in the corner of the house, so they'll grow up pretty good size and be evergreen there. And that is I think I did a little lime hydrangea right there I added. My Yoshino cherry was blooming a little bit. It's pretty much finished. Sweet William's blooming. Sweet William dianthus. And I've got rosemary, and this is a cute little pink carpet rose I'm gonna plant right there, and we just popped in some yarrow there. This garden is about to be beautiful this year. Lavender is blooming. This is a little Spanish lavender, which does really good for us, our heat and humidity. Got some phlox popping up back there. There's a few little empty pockets here along the borders. My mom's coming down for Easter to spend the weekend with us, and we're going to make a little trip to Petals and pick up some plants. Ooh, Clotilde pears blooming. This is my beautiful, sweet little rose, Clotilde pear. The perfect rose for the garden gate entrance to the potager garden. Let's walk down this border a little bit. That's another Clotilde pear, but this is the shrub form, and that is the climber. And I thought that this was the climber as well, but I picked up the wrong one. So I've got to go back and get another climber to go right here. All my little Johnny jump ups are popped up. Funny, last year, I'm not sure how, but I had one little Johnny, well, a couple of little Johnny jump ups that were somehow in one of my plants or something, and it was just right over in there. And then this year I've got all of these Johnny jump ups, and I love them. Dianthus and lavender blooming. That's Belinda's Dream, which has beautiful big buds on it. My poor eucalyptus over here got hit by the frost we had a couple months ago, I guess. It got really low temperatures and I had to cut most of it away, but it's trying to come back out. And then last night we had another freeze and it hit all the new growth. I hope this baby survives. I got a bunch of little wildflowers popping up here, poppies, maybe some larkspur in there. I'm really not sure what all's in there. It was a mix. Clary sage. This is my medicinal herb border here. Hansa rose. This is a rugosa rose. It's blooming. I love this foliage on it too. Such a pretty rose. So we added these logs as bed borders all throughout the garden. We're still working on it from trees that fell in the storm mostly. And we've done the bed borders with the rocks and the logs. So I kind of added a little curve here in front of my bench. My comfreys are all popped up. Echinaceas are popping back up. Yarrows are underneath there. There's some yarrow and some trash. Let's see. My marshmallow come back. Fennel. Sweet peas are coming up. So this first bed here and this second bed here really hasn't been planted yet. And I think what I'm gonna do is do cut flowers and herbs mostly in these two beds. I'll pop in a few vegetables here and there, but for the most part, these are going to be herbs and cut flowers, I think, which will really be pretty from the view from the front of the house. My archway is filling out beautifully. This is the one with roses on it. And this rose is Rosa multiflora carnea is the name of it. And it's filling out so pretty. It's on this side and on the back side of the tunnel. And then I just planted 2 new roses on the front side here and the back side over here. And these that I planted is New Dawn. I really wanted Gertrude Jekyll to go on this tunnel, this rose tunnel. And I was gonna order it, but they were like 40 bucks a piece. They were really expensive by the time you paid shipping. So 2 roses, which is what I need, was gonna cost me like $80. And I'm really not even sure how disease resistant she is for us here in central Alabama. So for $80, I could get like almost 5 roses at Petals. So I just chose not to get her. But what I'm thinking is maybe eventually when we get our fence put around the potager garden here, that I'm gonna get a Gertrude Jekyll and just put her on the fence, maybe toward the front of the fence or something, because she definitely needs a place in my garden. But I just wasn't ready to invest that kind of money right now, especially on a rose that I wasn't sure how disease resistant she was going to be for our heat and humidity. So I went with New Dawn, a beautiful, classic, old-fashioned rose, dates back to 1800s, repeat bloomer, fragrant, beautiful rose. I've had her before. I love her. So that's who I went with. So this Rosa multiflora carnea behind me here is little small pink clusters, just a spring bloomer, very, very fragrant. And then New Dawn is a bigger, more traditional sized rose, light pink, very fragrant, and a repeat bloomer. So I think it's really going to be a pretty combination on this rose tunnel here. So today's Good Friday. You're actually going to be watching this video on Easter Sunday, so happy Easter. But my whole family's going to be here this weekend, so I wanted to go ahead and spend some time with you guys out in the garden to celebrate Easter together. I mean, what better way to celebrate together, because life began in a garden. God created the Garden of Eden, and then he created Adam and Eve, and he put them in the garden to take care of the garden, to work the garden, to cultivate it, to care for it, to take care of it. So Adam really was the first gardener. And the beautiful thing about that whole story to me is the fact that God met them in the garden daily. In the cool of the day is what the Bible says, that he met them in the garden. He walked with them and talked with them and had a relationship with them. And that is just so beautiful to me, to think about walking in the garden with God. So these beds are empty right now, but it's not going to be long and they're going to be just full and crazy and wild and beautiful. But I am super excited about all the work that we've got done out here this winter. We've been bringing in lots of compost, topsoil, mulch, adding borders around the beds. So I'm really happy about these beds. I think that they're really going to grow some beautiful food and flowers. Now this side, we do have a good bit in here. We've got sweet peas and nasturtiums at the base of the trellises, and the nasturtiums over here are struggling a little bit. Chase sowed seed in this whole bed. We've got right here, he did kale. Let's see what's coming up. Yeah, we got some baby kales in there coming up. Quite a few. So we did kale all down these rows. Those are onions that was planted in the fall. Over there is cilantro that reseeded itself and came up. Those are collards right there. And over here he sowed turnips and mustards. So look at all these turnips coming up. We'll have to come in and thin a little bit. He sowed pretty thick. And there's mustards coming up. So that's awesome. All the way down through that way is turnips coming up. And over on this side, he sowed a lot of rutabaga seed. And it's all coming up. We'll have to come through here and thin these too. Rutabagas are coming up nicely. Now we did sow these seeds a little bit later than I did last year, and these are cool season vegetables. So depending on our spring and how hot we get, how fast we get hot, I don't know how well they're actually going to do and be able to produce before they start bolting and go into seed, and then they get bitter and they don't do so well in our heat and humidity. Last year I planted these things like in February. A lot of these things got put in the ground around the end of February, mid to end of February. And we got some harvest from them. So this year it was like mid-March when we did these, because we were still putting in all of the soil amendments and the compost and everything in here, and we just weren't ready to sow seed yet. So I don't know, I'm kind of pushing it with how late we can plant cool season vegetables for a spring harvest. But we'll see. I mean, that's part of a garden, is experimentation. I'm pretty concerned about my olive trees. If you remember, I had them in the big green ceramic pots that I bought. And when we had that really low freeze this winter, I moved them to the garden shed. Well, the garden shed is not heated at all. In fact, it's really cool in there. And they struggled, lost all their leaves, turned brown and lost all their leaves. But when I check it, there's still some green. I think it's still alive. I'm super hopeful that my olives are still alive. Got 2 of them. That one down there looks a lot better. It's still got green leaves holding on a few. But this one, I don't know how well it's going to do, but I am praying that my olives make it. This bed, what do we have? We put up 2 new cattle panel trellises here, and we're gonna grow tomatoes on these. And at the base of the tomato trellises is garlic that was planted this fall. I planned all of my garden spaces out this way, but the garlic was planted here in the fall, knowing that this was going to be where my tomatoes were going to be planted this year, because I'm rotating my crops, and I wanted my garlic and my tomatoes to be companion plants together. So I planted the garlic here this fall, and then the tomatoes will go in just as soon as it warms up enough, and I'm sure that that freeze is gone. I've been resisting planting my tomatoes. I've got some nice looking tomatoes in the greenhouse, and I've been wanting to get them in the ground, but I've been resisting planting the tomatoes, the basil, some of my flowers. They're just in my greenhouse, because I learned quite a few years ago, the hard way, not to plant anything till after Easter here. I mean, it's an old timers thing. It was what my pawpaw said. It was what Jean's grandmother always said, and Jean's dad always says. And I learned, I figured out, we're always going to have a frost or freeze at Easter. There's always going to be one. I don't care if it's been like upper 80s here in Alabama, but I knew that we were going to have another frost before it was over with. So it always happens at Easter, always, and it did. So today's Good Friday, and last night we got down to like 32, I think, and tonight it's supposed to be the same thing. So I'm glad I waited. At the end of this bed, Chase planted some onion bulbs, and they're coming up. They're shooting up. We got red onions and yellow onions coming up. And at this end, I've got lettuce and carrots coming up. The lettuce is covered up with mulch right now. I come out here last night and just kind of threw some mulch over the top of it, hoping that frost wouldn't kill it, and they look like they did okay. But these carrots, let me tell you, I'm super late on getting the carrots in the ground, but let me tell you what I did. I have a really hard time getting my carrot seeds to germinate out here. Champ tramples them, the rain washes them away. I mean, I have a hard time getting these little teeny carrot seeds to germinate out here. So what I did something that everybody tells you not to do. I sowed my carrot seeds in plug trays. I sowed them thick in a plug tray, and probably 75% of what I sowed come up. And I just transplanted them when they were little, like a little. I did it when they were tiny, before they got a good root system on it. I transplanted them out here in the garden. It was very tedious and kind of time consuming, but I did it anyway because I really want to be able to grow carrots, and I just wanted to try that and see if it worked, and they look really good. So I don't know, and this really isn't a good test because I'm so late getting them in the ground to be able to harvest them before it gets really hot out here. So this really isn't a good test of how well they're going to do. But as far as sowing the seed in a plug tray and transplanting them in the ground and them growing, they're doing really well. So the sad part about the story of the Garden of Eden is Adam and Eve brought sin to the world in the garden, and they were banished from the garden. But this brought the need for Jesus to come to earth as a man and sacrifice his life so that we could be forgiven, so that humanity and man could be forgiven and have eternal life in heaven. So after Jesus was crucified on a cross, he was buried in a tomb in a garden. But 3 days after he was buried, he walked out of that tomb. The really cool thing about this story in this scripture that really stood out to me this year as I was reading it was when Jesus walked out of that tomb after his resurrection, the very first person that he appeared himself to was Mary Magdalene. And she thought he was a gardener. She thought he was the gardener. So I mean, I've never really, I guess, paid that much attention to that. I've read it probably a million times, but it's never like really sunk into me that life began in a garden, the Garden of Eden, and before Jesus' death, he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and that's where he was praying before he was crucified. He was crucified in a garden. He was buried in a garden, and when he was resurrected, and the first person he appeared to, Mary Magdalene, she thought he was the gardener. So I got to thinking about that, and you know, God does everything with purpose. There's a significance for everything. So I just started praying for God to reveal to me, like, what is the significance here? Why did Jesus appear to Mary as a gardener? This bed has quite a few things in it as well. Right here is more carrot seed that I just directly sowed in the ground, and you can see it did not come up. Like I said, I have a hard time germinating carrot seed for some reason. This is cauliflower, and I've got sweet alyssum coming up all along the edge here. That frost last night kind of hit it a little bit. Oh, I hope it makes it. But I've got it coming up all around this curve here. Oh, I hope it makes it. I love sweet alyssum. And it is such a great companion plant for all of your vegetables in the brassica family. They attract so many beneficial insects. So that's cauliflower. This is Brussels sprouts. All of these are different kinds of Brussels sprouts all the way down because we love Brussels sprouts. Back here this is broccoli and beets. All the way down this row is broccoli and beets. Those are fall onions that was planted in the fall. On the back side of this trellis, Chase planted more onion bulbs, and they're popping up out of the ground. Yay! So this trellis will have more tomatoes on it. We're going to try to grow a good many tomatoes this year. Chase and I just saw our potatoes. We're bummed. That frost got them last night. They were looking so good. They were growing really fast and just lush and beautiful. And now look at them. We just covered them with mulch. So maybe that somewhat protected them underneath. I don't know. These are cabbages that Chase planted. And the frost got these muscadines too. They had new foliage all coming out of them and buds. And the frost nipped them. Darn. This bed over here has nothing in it yet. I can't remember what's on my plan to go in here yet. This bed here is going to be sweet potatoes, and we had an extra cattle panel trellis, so we put it up back there. And this is my other olive that looks better than the one up front, but still not great. I just hope they make it. This is a new bed that we made, and I've got emerald green arborvitaes planted all the way down it to make a wall, a living green wall to hide my greenhouse. Think they're gonna come out of it?
I think so.
You being positive?
No, they're down in the root. They're fine. It's just knocked off that green new foliage. Wish we had some straw to put over it.
The chicken coop, I worked on this a little bit. I took out all the bricks. I had bricks making the border around this, and I replaced them with rocks because the bricks just, they weren't stable. They kept getting knocked over, and it didn't look good. So I really love the rocks here. I think that looks so much better. And my rose, this is Farmer's Dream, and it is bursting with buds. It's gonna be so pretty when it blooms. The rock border just looks so much better. And that's my bay leaf. I forgot that I had put asparagus in this pot, and I've got asparagus popping up through here. You want to join us for our garden tour?
I'll let you do the touring. I'm gonna go check the chickies out.
The baby chicks?
Yeah.
Let's go look at the baby chicks. Hey, chick, 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 chicks.
That's our song I always give the chickens. Hey, what we did.
What is that from? What is that
I don't remember.
song from?
I don't
is
remember.
it Hee Haw or something?
Probably. It probably the y'all. But what I did is Chase and I, with the temperature going down so low, we put this fabric, waterproof and wind barrier, just kind of stapled this up to kind of seal that, and we did it on this side, keep that wind and all. We got the light in there, so basically it's like an oven, and it'll just hold the heat a lot better. And the chickens can actually come over here on this side in this boxed in area and drink their water if they got really, but here they are.
This used to be our rabbit hutch.
Oh, that's a pretty chicken.
Look how big they've gotten. They want to be free. They want out of there.
Well, that's a pretty chicken. They've gotten big.
Uh-huh. They
Look
quick.
at that. Oh, Junior, back, Junior. There not be no roosters.
I'm gonna go jumping and get you all nasty now.
Look at
Alright, let's go in the greenhouse where it's warm. It's so cold out here. What's the temperature?
48.
48.
Champ. Champ. Come here, Champ.
Feels good in here.
Yeah.
Nice and toasty.
Come here, Champ.
It's 48 out there and it's almost 70 in here. That's awesome. We got a lot of wonderful things going on in here. So why did Jesus appear to Mary as a gardener? Well, I believe that Jesus was pointing us back to the garden, back to the first humans, back to the Garden of Eden and the way that God had intended it to be, to where he had a deep, intimate, personal relationship with man. When Jesus walked out of the tomb that Easter morning, he made everything right. He changed everything. He brought hope and forgiveness and freedom and reconciliation, and he brought back that intimacy. He made it possible that we could have that relationship with God the way that God had intended it when he created the first garden and the first man. And I believe that that's why Jesus appeared to Mary as a gardener, because he is the gardener. And he brought that relationship back to the way it was intended in the Garden of Eden. I believe God is very passionate about the garden. He's very passionate about the gardener. All throughout the Bible, there's so many different references to the garden, to gardeners, to sowing seed, agriculture, horticulture, botany. Jesus uses the garden and growing food and agriculture many times throughout scriptures in his parables. So I totally believe God is super passionate about the garden and the gardener. I mean, in Genesis, life began in a garden. And when you go to the end of Revelations, the Garden of Eden is restored back to what God had intended it to be. There's just so much deep beauty and meaning in the garden. It's So that's why I thought this would be a beautiful way for you and I to celebrate Easter together in my garden. God bless you. Y'all have a wonderful Easter, and I'll see you on the next video. Chloe! Chloe, where is she? Right under me? Chloe! Chloe, come on! Come on, Chloe. Get up here. Come on. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, Chloe. Here she comes. Watch her. She's figured it out. Here she comes. Watch her butt everybody out of the way. Oh, Chloe.